Hi everybody and welcome to DC Fine Art. Today I am going to be doing a review of some soft pastels. I'm going to be going over several different brands and just kind of going over the differences or similarities that these brands have to offer on their soft pastels. Now I'm only going to be working with the chalk-like pastels, and I'm not going to be working with the pastel pencils. Now I do have the soft pastel pencils and I have the different brands of those, and those also have different consistencies, but for this video and this video only, I'm going to be going over the different types, and not every single type because there's no way I could do that, but there'll be several different brands that I'll be going over, and I'll be just using them out on a swatch on this sheet of, and this will all be done on the pastel mat because it's just preference. I really do enjoy working with pastel mat, so that is my choice of paper because I absolutely love it. I love the way the pastels take on them. They work really, really well. You can add multiple layers to them, and yeah, so that is my choice of paper. So I've got this paper already taped down, and I've got like the name right here. I got Sennelier, and then I got the Prismacolor NuPastel on there. But then we'll also be working with some other brands too, which will be here we go. So I got the soft Diane Townsend, the Great American Artworks pastels, the Mount Vision, and then we'll be trying out, and this is one that I'm really curious because some of these I haven't tried out at all. This will be the first time. And I got the Taranjas, I think that's what it's called. It's by Diane Townsend also. The Jack Richardsons and the Unison. And yeah, so we're going to be actually trying out these pastels. I'm going to be using some different tools for blending. Basically just the three that I usually use just to see how they work with these pastels. So yeah, so let's go ahead and jump on into this review and start going over some of these soft pastels and just seeing what the differences are between them. All right, let me go ahead and switch this screen. All right. So now we got a bigger screen here so we can see. And I'm hoping you guys can hear me still well. I'm going to turn this microphone. Hopefully it won't be too noisy with me turning it. And of course the AC kicks on. Let me go turn that off just in case it's too loud. All right, so I am back, and so we're going to start off with the Sennelier. And let's see here. Of course, this is like I don't have labels on them, but I do believe that's either going to be a black or a dark brown. On the Sennelier. So let's go ahead and use this. Yeah, it's the black. So I'm going to make 3 little area swashes right here, because I got 3 types of blending tools. Of course you can see the runoff on this, so it is a super, super soft pastel. And here is my softs tool. Now usually on stuff like this you can use these softer pastels for a final layer over the top, or you can use them at the beginning for doing some blending. You can just see how soft. Now that's the one thing about these soft tools, and I don't know if any of you guys have used the soft tools before, but usually whenever I use them and I'm trying to blend them out, which it blends out very nicely, but you see how it also kind of lightened it? It's because it kind of took some of it away. It pushed some of it in there, but then it also kind of took some of it off. So you have to watch out on these. And this is the same kind of thing. It's another soft tool, except it's a little bit smaller. So you can work a little bit lighter and just kind of get in there. And that is a really super dark black too. It's a nice black, but it's really also very, very soft. Now here's my favorite one. Just using your regular paper blender. I think they're called like tortillas or whatever you want to call them, technical name for them. But yeah, this right here happens to be one of my favorite blenders, and it's just using a paper blender in general. They even have the solid ones that are more like a whole solid instead of these twisted ones. These are a little bit cheaper with the twisted paper. I kind of like the ones that are completely solid paper, but this will do just as good. And see, I really like using these to get into some smaller details, like maybe even with some eyes, the nose, and kind of blending it out a little bit, because that way it doesn't necessarily just take every bit of the pigment off. Like I can blend it out and I can really push it into that paper, but it also keeps more of this pigment on the paper. And it makes it to where it's still dark. It doesn't remove as much as the soft tools, as you can tell. So that is blended out. There goes a nice little blow in there. But you see how the difference is between it? You've got this to where you actually push it into the paper, and then also you can blend it out, but yet keeping it super dark. While the soft tool tends to be more of like a sponge type of material, and it does take away some of the pastel. So you just want to be careful with that depending on what you want to use it for. If you're just wanting to cover a large area background, then using the soft tool is beautiful and perfect for that. If you're wanting to cover large areas but not have that dark tone to it, if not, you're going to have to do another layer on top of it. Now if you use the paper one, which I absolutely love using, it actually keeps a lot of the pastel on the paper and pushes it down into the grooves, and so you got more of a vibrancy of the color. But yes, the Sennelier is a super soft pastel, so that right there just tells you you can layer on top of some harder pastel. If you're doing some final touch-ups, final details, and you're just wanting to just kind of go over it, you can. If you have a lot of pigment down and you can't get any more of the soft pastels on your paper, then using a softer pastel like this would be great. Or at the very beginning, covering large areas is also, doing like a base coat is also a good one for this Sennelier. So now our next one is going to be the Prismacolor NuPastel. And I just so happen to, my pastels on these NuPastels by Prismacolor, I use the Koh-i-Noor. This right here is a chalk holder. And see, you can push it and it expands out, and then you can put this little bitty NuPastel right in there, and it holds it perfectly, so that way you're not having to put it in your hand and get your hand all dirty. Now I order like quite a few of these. I order them because you can order these open stock, at least of the black, the NuPastel black soft pastel, because this happens to be one of the darkest blacks that I can find out there to give it a lot of impact, like the center of an eye. If I'm using a lot of blue and I'm wanting to give that pop of the darkest dark I can find, this one here, it works amazing. It is super dark, and it's going to be a harder pastel. Of course, the shape of it, with it being square, is very nice to add super fine line details. So in corners of eyes, you know, whiskers, anything like that with a sharp edge like that. And it's more of a harder soft pastel. So there I can usually draw like my line. But let me go ahead, for instance sakes, I should use up some more of this paper. So we're actually going to go, let's go over here. So I'm adding quite a bit of pigment down on this. And see, this is another reason why I like this pastel, is to add the sharp corners, because you can draw lines. And then you can have like a bigger line. But yeah, you can get finer details and finer lines with this sharper pastel. Now, as far as blending wise, we're going to go ahead and blend this with the soft tool and just see how it goes, since it is a harder soft pastel. And see, it still blends nicely, but you can tell that it hasn't really lifted as much as the softer pastel. Oops, I want to use that one. Let me go ahead and use this one here. So you'll still get the blending. Usually the soft pastels have nice blending, but you're keeping a lot more of that pigment in the center. So you're keeping a lot more of the darker color in there. And that's because of how hard or soft a pastel is. This one here is great for detail. It's harder. And it blends super, super nice. I absolutely love blending with these paper stumps. Oops. But just looking on how rich and how black that is, it is just simply gorgeous. I love my NuPastel, my black. I love using that for like the darkest colors. So yes, I would, this one here is a must for me, and I usually order these open stock, and I order multiples of those. So now, let's go ahead and switch this up. I'm going to stick this somewhere. Okay. Get to some of these funner colors. I have a few of them that I have not tried yet, and I'm dying to see what those are like. And the first one right here, which is the Taranjas, I have, well, let me move this down a little bit for you guys. Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so these Taranjas, I have never used this one. And I've only got, went ahead and just ordered one. Now, if you're wondering about price range of these, I mean, these are very expensive, you know. I mean, to me, they are. I mean, it's just some of the higher end pastels, and I'm not for sure why. I love the Unison. Unison is already more of a higher end pastel, at least price range wise. But the Taranjas, for some reason, was extremely higher up there. So I was just kind of curious on what it was. I only got one, and as of course you can buy these individually. So I went ahead and got me one single one of the Taranjas. They're by Diane Townsend. And let's see what it's like. I'm kind of curious. I've heard good and bad reviews on these. You know, some people like them, some people don't, and that is perfectly fine. Choosing a pastel is all about preference. It's all about what you like. It may not be the same as what somebody else likes. Everybody is different, and that is perfectly fine. And which is why I'm testing them out, you know, because I wanted to see my opinion of things and just see how it is. But looking on how much pigment is laid down, it really is opaque. So that is really, really nice. So it does lay down a really nice rich color. Seems to be really thick. It's soft, so it's not super, super hard. And the pigmentation in these are very gorgeous. The color is really, really beautiful. Now I'm going to get my paper here, since I was using a lot of the black, and I'm just in order to clean these, all you do is just rub it on a paper towel. And I'm using like a Viva paper towel. And see, you just wipe it off. And even though it's dark here, that's how you clean it off. And this is how I get my hands dirty. So now I'm going to go ahead and clean off this one too. Just rub it on there until it goes clean. And there we go. And I do the same thing with my paper stumps too. I'll just wipe those off. And even though it does have a dark on there, it's still clean once it wipes off on a paper towel and comes out clean. So it's fine. All right, so here is the syringes. Wow. That is gorgeous. And it seems to me like it really does push that pigment down into the paper, but yet it keeps a nice solid solid opaqueness. It does not take it completely off like the Sennelier. Sennelier I was rubbing with the the soft tool, which that's S-O-F-F-T, soft. And I was using it and it was taking majority of the pigment off. It was a very, very soft pastel, so it actually removed a lot of the pigment. While this one here is keeping the pigment and pushing it into the paper, yet it's keeping this very beautiful color. And I know the camera may be a little bit off on the color wise, but it is actually, and looking at it with your own eyes, it is actually gorgeous. It's a beautiful color. So let's go ahead and use my soft tool, my little one, and just see what that does. God, these blend out gorgeous. I don't know. You know, I've used a lot of Sennelier. I love those. I love my Jack Richardsons. But the Touranges are absolutely gorgeous. The pigment in there is, I mean, it's beautiful. And it's pushing out and blending out nicely. Very, very smooth look. Let's try my little paper stump blending. God, that's gorgeous. So yeah, very beautiful. It blends out nicely. It's softer blend, but yet it keeps its opaqueness. That is gorgeous. Okay, so Touranges are Touranges. I guess it is by Diane Townsend. Absolutely love it. So far, let's go ahead and move on. I'm gonna have to go back and look at this because the Unison and the Jack Richardson has always been one of my favorites. I know Sennelier was too, and I really like them. Some other pastels or soft pastels can be a little bit different, and these are the handmade pastels. So some could be a little rougher than others, or a little bit chalkier. But let's go ahead and jump into this Jack Richardson's. So I got one of these, and this one here is just a half one. It's not a whole pastel, but the half set. And let's see what happens. There's one. There's two. And it was really kind of funny because on these Touranges also, in some reviews, because I was kind of reading on what people would say about them, some of them said that they actually squeezed these a little bit too hard and they exploded. into like a million pieces to where you could not really function or work with them. And I mean, as you can tell, whenever I used it, I didn't have no issue with it exploding in my hand, but I also wasn't using a lot of pressure on it. You know, you don't, I wouldn't say you would need to use a lot of pressure on it because it came off so easily that you wouldn't have to push down really hard to get the pigment on the paper. So I'm not quite for sure on what that was, unless they were trying to break it off into smaller pieces, like little shards, to be able to get detail marks with a sharp edge, and then it probably exploded. So yeah, I don't think I would be trying to purposely break those. I mean, it's gorgeous, but if I'm wanting to add detail, there is other. I mean, I would probably use a harder pastel, soft pastel, or just use one of my Unisons. But let's go ahead and test out the Jack Richardson because I'm curious. Okay. Now, the Jack Richardson looks like it blends out a little bit stuck to the paper there. I mean, you still got a nice center in it. Looks like it takes away some. It doesn't actually push out and make the pigment opaque as it pushes out like these. These did, but the blending's a little bit. It's not as soft, so it's not really blending out as well. And the soft tools are kind of taking away some of the pigment, but not as much as the Sennelier. The Sennelier kind of took, the soft tools really took it off a lot more. Okay, well, let's try this. And see, this is what I like using because it keeps a lot of the pigment on the paper. It doesn't pick it up and take it away. So it just basically pushes it down into the tooth of the paper, which is keeping more of your pigment there instead of removing it. And see, that blends out nicely. So yeah, this is not as soft as the Sennelier, but yet it still removes pigment with the soft tool. So now I'm just cleaning my brush real quick, or my soft tool. And we were going to try these Unisons. Let's see here. I am going to grab a blue. Let's do a blue. Okay. So here's a Unison. It's a whole stick, handmade or hand rolled. And we are going to try one. Now, as you can tell, this is just like super soft. The pigment looks really rich. So it's got a beautiful pigment to it. So it's very bold. Okay. So now we're going to try a soft tool and see what happens. And the soft tool kind of removes some of that pigment. As you can tell, it's very similar to the Sennelier. That's pretty much the same as what the Sennelier does. So it removes a lot of the pigment. Now let's go ahead and try this one. And it does the same thing. Removes a lot of the pigment. So it's very similar to the Sennelier. I would still have to say, though, when you're applying like taking the actual pastel and applying it to the paper though. It is not as, you've got more control to be able to add in like some detail. You can actually break those. You can use sharper edges to be able to add your detail or fine lines with the Unison ones. Now, so they're not as crumbly as the Sennelier. Like Sennelier are super soft and they're more crumbly kind of consistency, while these here, you can actually add your detail and everything else in them. But we're using like the soft tool and stuff like that. It does remove a lot of the pigment. I like using my little paper stumps to be able to work it in. It still has lost some of its pigment though, but it's just because of the type of pastel it is. Still, I would have to say the Turanges, oh my gosh, it kept a lot of its pigment. As you can see, it didn't really remove any of the pigment, or at least as much with the soft tool. It kept its pigment and just expanded, keeping its the opaqueness. So I am really still impressed with those Turanges. They are one of the more expensive. I know that they are a little bit higher than the Unison, but oh my god, they're gorgeous. Love those. And then my second one, I would have to say the Jack Richardson seems to be very nice too. Still has some of the removing of the pigment on it, but it does have some beautiful rich colors in it too. I like the opaqueness that's in it. So let's go ahead and try our last three. What's really a shame is that I only got one of the Turanges. I only bought one. But I was just so afraid to go ahead and buy more than one and then it be not that great, you know? And then you just spent a lot of money on something that wasn't that great. So this was one way I could actually try it and just see if I actually like it or not. Now, if you see this up here, that is, let's take the brown, the brown one. Okay, so this is also says Diane Townsend. Now I had the Turanges that we tried that I absolutely loved, and it looks like this. Square, and it says Turanges. I got this one from Dick Blick's by Diane Townsend. Now this one here is also Diane Townsend, and it says Soft Form. So these are hand rolled Soft Form Diane Townsend's, and this one here of course is the Turanges. So I'm curious to see, this one here happened to be more expensive than the Soft Form. This one here is a little bit cheaper than the Turanges. And I'm wondering if it's just because of the shape, but then again, this says Soft Form and this one doesn't. So I'm wondering if this is going to end up acting more like our Richardsons or our Unison or Senneliers. This one here, I'm in love with this one. And I'm guessing that they said that this one here is made out of like a pumice. So that's what makes it different. But absolutely gorgeous. I think that happens to be one of my favorite ones. Okay, Diane Townsend Soft Form. I think I really should have moved that Great American one down. But we will work with it. Okay, so we got some really rich pigment there. Wow. So it really did keep a lot of its pigment. It did do a little bit of removing. It was soft. But yeah, it's very similar to, God, the pigment is super soft. I want to say it's more similar to the Jack Richardson's. Let's try doing this blending. I don't know. This blends out very nicely. I think even the center, it doesn't leave like a center that looks like solid, and then the outside, it kind of blends really evenly. And there it kind of removed a little bit, but the center in there is a little bit solid. Very beautifully. Still, I can definitely tell a big difference between the soft form and the Tarangas. There is a difference. God, these colors are beautiful. It keeps its brilliance. Very rich pigments. Yes, I love those. Those are really super nice. But still, so far, I'm really thinking those Tarangas have been my favorite. Let's go ahead and do the Great American Artworks and just see what happens there. Now, the Great American Artwork, of course, I only got one to try it out, and they're handmade. This one here is Ramona is the color, and it is like handmade square. It's like a really big, compared to, here's a Unison, a whole Unison. This thing is really big. So, I mean, it's a pretty big pastel. Now, this one was a little bit more pricey too. So these were still on the high end. I do believe they could be costing, like, individually was a little bit more than the Unison even. So, but don't take my word on that. I don't know. I think that's what it was. So I'm just kind of curious on how this is. Oh, that is soft. That is like creamy soft. Shocker. I wasn't quite expecting that, considering how hard it is. I was actually expecting it to be really hard, or at least on the hard side, kind of like our NuPastel from Prismacolor. But it isn't. It's actually really, really creamy. Super cool. So let's go ahead and blend these out and see what happens. Wow, that blends out super nice. So it doesn't really remove too much of the pigment, not like the Diane Townsend. So you can see a difference here. It keeps a lot of the pigment on there. Wow, that's gorgeous. Let me wipe that off just to make sure. Oh, those are gorgeous. So it keeps a lot of its pigment there. That's beautiful. And the creaminess of those pastels there is absolutely amazing. That is actually getting close to the Tarangas on its pigment and its how opaque it is, and how that is just gorgeous. I would have to say, yeah, it's more in comparison to the Tarangas. Now the Mount Vision, here's another one. And these are all that I got these from Blick's Art Supply. So it's another one. Mount Vision Pastel Company. And it's a pretty big one too. Like, it's even bigger than that one. Let's see here. Let me grab a Unison. Look at that. That makes the Unison look small. So yeah, this one's much bigger. I love that Great American one. That is really nice. All right, Mount Vision. Ooh, now this feels more chunkier, feels a lot drier. A lot drier. I'm getting more of a sandy feel to this one. This one here, Mount Vision, is feeling more like a Sennelier. I can already tell you that. It's got that gritty kind of feel to it. Like sandy, gritty kind of feel to it. Okay. Let's see how it blends. So yeah, it has a lot of the pigment still on there, but it kind of takes a lot of it off. Blends out really smoothly, blends out really good for like large areas. If you're trying to cover large areas, this would be similar to a Sennelier. It's much drier and it's a lot grittier, but it spreads like crazy. So it really does have the potential of covering a large amount of area with just a little bit. So yeah, but for price range wise, I would still say Sennelier would probably be a close comparison. I mean, you got it still lays down a lot of the pigment. It holds a lot more of the pigment in there than the Sennelier. But yet it blends out really smoothly. So yeah, those are amazing colors. I don't see an issue with any of them. It just all depends on your price range, what you might be interested in. And if you're looking for something with a lot of pop, those Tarangas are awesome. They're really pricey, but look at those colors. It didn't really remove anything, and they are just gorgeous. The color pigmentations of those Tarangas are awesome. And then of course Unison kind of, I don't know. I like my Jack Richardson's one of my favorites. Of course I use this one here, the Prismacolor, for any detail. But the Great American was another favorite. The Great American Works, which was that square one, is very similar to like the Tarangas on keeping its opaqueness or opacity. I can't even talk today. The opaqueness. And then Mount Vision's more of a drier one that spreads out. So if you're wanting to cover large areas, Mount Vision would probably be the best. So yeah, I mean, that's totally up to you on the different ones that maybe you might like. Hopefully this has helped you out and kind of getting some ideas on some of these pastels that you see on some of these art sites like the Blicks, and you just kind of wondered what they all do, what's the difference between them. Each one of them has a difference, and whether or not you get one that has, you know, it costs a lot more, but yet you're getting these beautiful, beautiful pigments like that, and the richness, creaminess of the soft pastel. That's what drives up the price on some of these, is just because of that reason. At least that's what I can see, because so far the ones that I see that are more of the high-end ones seem to lay down a lot more colors. Then again, I only have one of the Taranjas. I do not have any more of those. I would really like to get me some more. Those are super nice. Jack Richardson's, I love those. Those are really nice. But that Great American one, that one's really was unexpected. I would have thought it was hard, like would have been going on super, super hard. And instead it was like creamy. Like when I started rubbing it on the paper in the little circles, it was so creamy. It like melted into the paper. So that Great American Artworks, this one right here, really shocked me. That looked like it was going to be hard as a rock. I did not know it was going to be that creamy. And you're getting a lot of pastel. So this is a full pastel, and yeah, you're getting a lot. So even though it's a bigger price tag, you are getting a bigger pastel, so for the money. So then again, it could actually even out. But anyways, this completes my review of these soft pastels. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me go ahead and turn it back so maybe I can see you guys. There you guys are. Whew, it's getting hot in here since I turned off the AC. But I hope you guys enjoyed this, covering these different soft pastels, kind of going over them so that way if maybe you're kind of like me where you look at some of these blicks and you see all these different types of pastels and you kind of wonder, okay, I don't want to pay a lot of money for something that I'm not for sure if I'm going to like it or not. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pick up one of each of these, you know, certain pastels and just see how they are, test them out for you guys and see what you guys think. Have you used any of these soft pastels? Do you like them? What are your thoughts on this? And then on our next video, I'm going to go ahead and do a pastel piece for you guys. And yeah, I want to show you this too, because you were kind of, I was talking about those NuPastel from Prismacolor, and it's here, let me use this one. See this right here, the NuPastel. To get into those areas, this is a cat that I was working on. This has been a while, but I got the cat's eyes in here, and working this right here, this is the black, and you can just see just how dark that is and how it comes out. So yeah, you can use these on smaller details and just get that richness or that dark areas that you're needing in the eyes. I know this cat, I've been staring at this cat for a long time. I never did finish him, but I did one thing where I was just working on his eyes and showing how to do cat's eyes with soft pastel. But then I kind of stopped on him, and I always thought, just by looking at this cat, that he looked kind of like something off of Alice in Wonderland. I don't know, I just got that look. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're new here, leave a like and subscribe. Love to have you guys on here for anybody new. And if all you guys who's been on here before and have been with me, thank you so much for watching. And yeah, I can't wait to see you next week where I'll be doing a soft pastel piece of work. So I'm not for sure, actually. I'm kind of thrown on different things. May end up doing one. If it takes too long to do, it may be a multi-part video. And yeah, let's go ahead and go from there, and I'll see you guys all next week. Bye.